Kenya's Supreme Court today began hearings on a controversial constitutional review bill that has been at the heart of politics for several years in the East African country. Known as the Building Bridges Initiative, this revision plans to create new positions in the executive, a prime minister, 2 deputy prime ministers and an opposition leader. Now, the initiative will also increase the number of parliamentarians from 290 to 360. According to the outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta, who initiated the project, this opening up of power would dilute the winner-takes-all rule. Now, Kenyatta considers the current system to be the cause of the post-election conflicts in Kenya. The bill, which was passed by Parliament in May, was to be put down to a referendum, was taken to court by its critics, and there was the first hearing, and then a court of appeal ruled that the president did not have the constitutional right to initiate such a process. The hearings in the Supreme Court are scheduled to continue until Thursday. Well, for some analysis of what all of this means, we're now joined by Dr. Margaret Munyanyi, who's an international relations lecturer at Wits University and one of our regular commentators on political issues affecting Kenya. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
All right, just remind us again why Uhuru Kenyatta really wants this bill to go forward. He's going to be leaving office soon. Why does it matter to him so much?
Okay, so yeah, the BBI of course started after the in 2018, 2019, thereabout, after the contested 2017 elections. So Uhuru Kenyatta, the current president, and Raila Odinga decide to come together and have what is famously known as the handshake to agree to a peace truce. So there are various speculations as to why he would want this to go forward. First of all, perhaps it has to do with his legacy. He wants to leave something behind, that this is one landmark legacy that he could leave behind, that he pioneered this very very serious political process which culminate into the amendment of the constitution. That is one way to look at it. But there have also critics who have mentioned that perhaps this is an avenue for him to create a room for him to vie for the position of prime minister, which is now one of those recommendations in the BBI, given that the current constitution gives a 2-term limit for the president. So there are those critics who argue that perhaps this is one way for him to find a way to come back into the government. But in my own opinion, I think it's all about legacy. It's about legacy. But this major thing that he did just the last minute before he left office.
He puts forward some pretty good arguments, I guess, given the political violence that we've seen in previous years. He says that this might be a solution. Why would there be opposition to this?
Okay, so of course the major opposition comes from the fact that this is not the time for a constitutional amendment. When the whole world is fighting a pandemic, citizens are losing jobs. It is just one of those misplaced priorities, as I would say. But again, to argue that the BBI would cure political violence it's skewed way of looking at things. Because what is violence? What has always caused violence? Why have Kenyans fought around election time? Is it because we did not have the premier position that is provided in the BBI? Was it because we didn't have more constituencies? Is it all about that? We have to go back to history and see how the violence unfolds around elections. It's all about engineered by political entities that, of course, position themselves as kingpins, as those people speaking on behalf of certain ethnic groups, and they use they use the ethnicity card to propel themselves into power, and unfortunately not in the positive way, but from the negative side. So it's not about the constitution; it's about around political socialization in the way our political leaders use the ethnicity card to propel themselves into power. And this has nothing to do, I swear today, even if the BBI, were to go through, there are certain issues, if Kenyans are not, do not come to the table and discuss freely, the violence will still continue. Then the other question this begs another question. Already we see the High Court and the Court of Appeal, of course, faulting the BBI process on the grounds of a faulty or hasty process. Then we ask ourselves, how can a hasty and fraudulent process result into a legit outcome? Because for us, it's expected that any process of change should also align with the goal. So the process can't be fraudulent and then result to some legit goal. That is not how it's supposed to happen.
All right. I mean, it does sound as if there could be political machinations here. I mean, you have two sworn enemies who've suddenly become the best of friends in recent years towards the end of one's tenure, and the hope for his friend now, Raila Odinga, perhaps becoming president after so many years of trying. Is that perhaps what really is the story here?
Yeah, so of course, there is that unfolding political environment in Kenya, that there is a possibility. We can't all say we can't really say that Raila will be president, but there are prospects from what we have seen in his launching of his candidature, presidential bid. I mean, there was so many people turning up, and of course, even the president has shown support for him, and so there is that anticipation that probably this time round, the fifth, now some people are already calling him the fifth in Kenya, he might make it. But again, there is the issue, maybe if I may bring in the issue of Ruto. You know, Ruto, the deputy president, had definitely fallen out with the president, that has always been seen in the media. He's been something that some people would say, perhaps by supporting Raila, it's a way to hit back at Ruto, because the expectation was that Ruto was expecting that the president would support him, given that in 2017 and even in 2013, he came on board. And you know the way the ethnicity plays a large role in Kenyan politics. There was the argument that he brought on the Kalenjin community, which consists about 3 million voters on board, so that the president could win. So the expectation was that this time round, the president would also give him the same support by asking his kinsmen, who are about 6 million voters in Kenya, to support the deputy president. But along the way, they fell out. And perhaps that's the more motivation for the president to support Raila, given that they had that handshake. Yeah.
Two other courts have already said no to this amendment. What's the likelihood that the Supreme Court will change the course of events here? It seems as if the other courts are pretty clear about what the rule of law is regarding this constitutional change.
Yes, yeah. Actually, the Supreme Court finds that itself at a very complex place. But yes, as you mentioned, already two courts have already discussed the issue and given their ruling that this was unconstitutional. It was an unconstitutional process. So in my opinion, there's nothing much that can change now. Let's look at two scenarios. What if, yes, the Supreme Court says, gives in to the BBI proponents? There is the issue of timelines. It can't just work out right now, given that already we are already in the year of elections. There are certain regulations in the Constitution, or guidelines in the Constitutions, for instance, when it comes to boundaries, adjusting boundaries, boundaries, then they cannot be done a year after. I mean, less than 12 months. We are already less than 12 months to an election. So I would expect they should just uphold. That is my personal opinion, because that doesn't mean that if they uphold the rulings of the other two courts, it doesn't mean that the BBI process or is dead, they can always go back even after the elections and after they have addressed all the issues that were raised by, say, the two or up to the third court. Then they have the right to go on and also revive the same process and follow it through.
All right. So, I mean, you've mentioned the proximity to the elections, but if what President Kenyatta says is true, the aftermath of the elections could be potentially problematic, or as you were saying earlier, you don't think it would make a difference?
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
I was just saying that, yeah, the polls are scheduled for August 9. So the timing is perhaps problematic. But if we are to believe the president, the aftermath of these elections could be more problematic than overcoming some of the challenges that you are talking about in terms of boundaries and so on and so forth. Or do you think it's not going to make a difference, as you were suggesting earlier?
I would, of course, if you read the history of the Kenyan elections, of course, there are normally tensions around that particular time. And I know the president is, of course, talking to that effect to give support to the BBI document. But again, like I mentioned, what causes this tension? The tension is caused by the political elite. And I think this is the time, in fact, to implore those who are now going forth to seek these elective seats. How do we engage in politics this time around? How do we? Because it's all about how do we engage in. We shouldn't be using the ethnic card anymore. It should be more of an inclusive process that we're no longer having people say, you know, Raila is a Luo, so how many Luos are coming on board now that Kenyatta has supported him? How many Kikuyus are coming on board? As long as we still have those hate narratives, those ethnic-centered narratives, then we are likely to encounter the same thing, because the violence in Kenya is politically, it's a discursive kind of, it's discursively constructed through speech, where certain political leaders say these people are not part of us, that if you're not supporting these certain religions, will support. It's all about in the speech. So if the political leaders are challenged to engage in politics differently this time around, and I hope not just the political leaders, even the Kenyans should be able to see that this time around they should be able to vote individuals based on their ideologies as opposed to ethnic groups. If we move away from that and we cause a new paradigm shift, perhaps this time around there won't be so much heat to result into violence.
All right, and I suppose just practically, in terms of money, increasing Parliament from 290 to 360, and Kenyan MPs are among the highest paid in the world already. This will be a huge burden on the fiscus. Exactly.
That is, you are right on point. That already the Kenyans are burdened by the salaries of, and there was this bill where now once you get into parliament, even once, you will be paid for the rest of your life. There was something of the sort. So you can imagine that we continue to pay for losers who are in their own homes, paying their medical insurance, I don't know, salaries or something of the sort. I think this is what even makes the criticism against BBI strong, because it doesn't look like an inclusive process, but rather that as an elite process that is meant to safeguard the interests of those who get it. In any case, if you look at the Kenyan politics, it's not for the poor. Right now, even at the ward level, that is the lowest level, the lowest political appointment, elected political post, you need like $50,000 to campaign. And this particular individual will not earn $50,000 during the 5-year term. So what do? They get in and they start to steal and engage in corruption to get the money they use during campaigns. So it's one very expensive affair. And so to increase that number, it means you are only increasing chances for those who have money to get to get into power, and it's never about the common citizen.
All right, well, let's see what the Supreme Court rules. A very important decision given the proximity to the August 9 elections. Dr. Munyani, always great talking to you. Thank you so much. Your insights greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Asante. All right, that's Dr. Margaret Munyani, who's a lecturer in international relations at Wits University, but a regular contributor on our program with Kenyan politics.